Good morning. I am Joe Kovacic, and I work in the DISA Emerging Technology Directorate. We would like to welcome you to today's technical exchange meeting. Zeva Incorporated will be presenting its decryption platform in today's session. Need to go over some administrative items before we get started. First, please mute your DoD 365 joint Microsoft Teams sessions. Second, this session is being recorded to allow future scrutiny of the presented capability by members of DISA and the DoD community. Third, this is a public forum, so no proprietary or sensitive information should be shared in this session. Fourth, we encourage questions during the session, so please use the raise hand function in the Teams menu to alert the presenters when you have a question. You can also enter your questions in the chat area anytime during the presentation. The questions will be addressed in the order they are received. I have to provide the following full disclosure and disclaimer. This technical exchange meeting does not infer any intention by DISA or the DoD to enter into an acquisition, contract, purchase, or endorsement of the presented capability. This session is purely for informational purposes only. We do not control how session participants will proceed with the conveyed content. Access to the technical exchange video, slide deck, and other artifacts will be made available through the National Security Innovation Network website, whose link is provided in the TEM session invitation each of you received. I've also posted a download link in the chat area for the slide deck for today's session, and I will repost it again there shortly. And with all that said, let us commence with the presentation. So over to you, Zeva Incorporated.
Hey, Joe, thanks. And thanks to all the members of the DISA team for dialing in today to be part of this technical exchange. By way of background, my name is Bob Ashley. I'm a retired Army Lieutenant General. Last jobs I had before I retired from the military was a director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, former Army G2, CENTCOM J2, and the JSOC J2. And now I'm the chairman of the Zeva Advisory Board. So I have a lot of firsthand experience and a great appreciation for DISA's mission. And so we're glad to have this TM with you guys today. Can you go to the next slide, please? So you can see on the slide our agenda. We've got two identified problems related to third-party access and end-to-end encryption that we assess. Zeva's DecryptNaBox and ZevaCrypt can help DISA, your team specifically, as well as a lot of customers that work in your enterprise and the services that you provide. For the DISA team, throughout the discussion, you'll note how these capabilities nest really well with multiple lines of operation from your 2022 to 2024 strategic plan. And what I would emphasize specifically is the lines of efforts that are related to cybersecurity, user experience, and how this will help you empower the workforce, which are some of your key lines of effort. Equally important, we'll address how these applications work within your existing IT. The ease of use, which, we talk about user experience and ease of use are absolutely critical in today's IT environment. And then what we'll do is, like Joe said, raise your questions as you go. If you want to raise your hand or put them into the chat, we'll make sure we're monitoring both of those as we move ahead. And we're going to tag team the brief. And so I'm going to hand this off in just a second to David Spinair, who's our Vice President for Growth, and then Gary DePalma, who's our Vice President for Professional Services, and Sam Andoni, who's our Chief Technical Officer and our Chairman, will kind of be the bulk of the co-briefers. But I also wanted to highlight that our CEO, Jihan Andoni, is with us, as well as other members of the Zeva team. So feel free to ask your questions as we go along, and we'll track those as best we can. And with that, let me hand it over to David, and he's going to give you just a little bit of background on Zeva and our company. David?
Thanks a lot, Bob. Yes, just by way of background on Zeva, Zeva started doing business in 2005 as a consulting company focused on identity management, PKI enablement. Early on, we started to see recurring challenges that our customers faced, especially in the area of data encryption and decryption. And there seemed to be no effective solutions in the marketplace for some of the problems we were seeing. So in 2011, Zeva made a strategic decision to enter the software market and start developing products to address some of those challenges. So we created a research and development capability from scratch, made heavy investment there. And by the end of 2012, we went to market with our first product. That product in 2012 was acquired by a couple of commercial companies. So at that point, we began to realize that we had something that we could build on. And from there, we built out a product set that we're going to present to you today. Can we go to the next slide, Sam? Customer slide. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sam. So as far as our federal customers go, the first use of our product in the federal world was the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS. They started using our product in 2014. After that, both Treasury Department and Veterans Affairs acquired department level licenses for our products, and that's how they run today. And we do notice that when the products are implemented at a department level, it makes use of them by the agencies within the department a lot easier, and there's more adoption in using the products. We also have sold a subset of our products into a couple of DoD agencies and also to one of the IC community agencies. We also have made sales of the products to commercial customers across industries, and they've enjoyed some good success there. Our first customer, just by way of history, was Boeing. They bought the product in 2012, and they continue to use it today. So we have quite a few customers and history with the product. Our products have been improved over time, and we're enjoying the opportunity here today to present them to you. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Gary DePalma, our Vice President of Professional Services, who's going to walk you through the products.
Great, thank you, David. So Zeva is both a product and services company, and as mentioned earlier, we'll be focusing on our core products, those being DecryptNaBox to address the downstream effects of end-to-end encryption, and ZevaCrypt, which is our intuitive end-to-end encryption solution. Sam, if you want to. So the government has made a significant investment in its public key infrastructure, PKI, and this has allowed for the implementation of PIV and CAC cards used for identification, physical access, and the ability to log into systems. And embedded in these cards are the user certificates provided by this PKI infrastructure. The certificates allow for the ability to sign and encrypt email with these PIV and CAC cards. OMB 1917 and Executive Order 14028 encourage the encryption of data, both with inside the government and to external contractors based on these PIV and CAC certificates. The complexity is really the usage of the PIV and CAC certificates downstream post-encryption. So without an easy way to address these downstream challenges, the PIV and CAC encryption is limited, typically only within the agency. So without an intuitive way to send the PIV and CAC encrypted email externally, one of the downsides is that end users could choose a less secure email encryption method to send those communiques, such as a web-based email encryption site, which typically fall back to authentication using username and password, which is clearly not a secure solution. So DecryptNaBox was created to specifically address the post-encryption challenges related to e-discovery, archiving, and then also inbound, outbound data inspection for trusted internet connections. So when you think about e-discovery and how you're currently addressing the downstream effects of end-to-end encryption, you can find it to be an extremely time-consuming manual process. The need to manually hold private keys can be slow. Delays providing the requested information can result in non-compliance for court cases and can have negative impacts on judicial rulings due to legal insufficiencies. There's also explicit security risk with the manual key private key handling process because those keys could be provided to investigators on a USB stick, shared folder, or other less secure mediums. This also means that the data and the private key are on the same device other than the owner of that private key. When we look at archiving, encrypted messages cannot be indexed without first being decrypted. This means incomplete archivings that are missing indexes for searchable results or non-compliance with narrow capstone regulations. And then finally, since the egress and ingress of encryption emails into the agency cannot be inspected through those trusted internet connections, the options for encrypted email are either to quarantine them, which means it doesn't reach the intended recipient, or if it's allowed through, those encrypted emails may contain malware inbound into the organization. And if they're allowed outbound without the data inspection, it could result in data leakage. So DecryptNaBox is an automated way to decrypt data to address these complexities with a systematic key recovery process that has built-in auditability and workflow compliance and that complies with the federal PK regulations. So whether the decryption is actually done in line or at the client level. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sam Adoni so he can explain the technical components of the product. Sam, you're on mute.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So first, I would like to thank Joseph for organizing this technical exchange meeting. Thank you, Bob, David, and Gary for the introduction. Good morning, all. Happy to be here. My name is Sam Andoni, as I am the President and CTO of Zeva Incorporated. This slide that you see in front of you is a busy slide, but it's very essential to understand what's unique about our technology. So I'm going to try to use animation to simplify the slides. You're going to see the lines change to purple and some movement when I'm speaking about component of those slides. So our DecryptNaBox platform, as Gary mentioned, was built to address all the challenges that was laid out in the previous slides. And it fully complies with the federal PKI regulation. So to be able to accomplish this, the main component that we design in our platform is the capability to actually get access. So the capability to be able to get access to the encrypted data without direct access to the private key. Currently, the only way for this to be able to address e-discovery requests, it's through manual key recovery. It's a little bit complex and take time. Today, we're going to show you how you can accomplish that same task securely and without any manual key recovery. But before I start, I would like to actually just to make sure that we are all in the same page and go through encryption 101. So on the left, you see an encrypted message, which just I moved for you. That encrypted message is typically, there is two kinds of encryption, and you are guys probably familiar with that. There is symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. In symmetric encryption, the same key is used for encryption and decryption. Asymmetric encryption uses a pair of keys, a private and a public certificate. And data is encrypted with the public key and decrypted with the private key. Why I'm speaking about that? Because S-MIME is the standard of encryption that is used across PKI, and it uses a combination of both. So S-MIME uses a combination of symmetric and asymmetric. So the way it works, just like to make sure we are all on the same base. The email client generates a random session key. That random session key is typically an AES-256. Then it takes that random session key, which I am referring to here, and encrypt the message with it using symmetric key, using symmetric encryption. Typically, as I mentioned, it's AES-256. Then it takes that session key and encrypt it with the public key of the intended recipients and create an array and adapt that array to the message header. This way, allow the users to actually reverse the process to decryption. So with that, when we start designing our platform, we decide to divide it into two distinct operations. The first operation is handling the session keys. To handle the session key, we created a server called Key Decrypt server. That Key Decrypt server mainly does session key decryption. It does have also another service called header service modification that I'm going to cover in a moment. But to be able to do a session key decryption, it needs to have access to the user's private key. And to have access to the user private key, there is multiple ways to do that. Either we have the capability to configure the system to integrate with a certificate authority to pull the private keys as needed, or we provide tools such as key migration tool or other offline tools to push the keys directly to the HSM. Eventually, the DecryptNaBox server use that HSM to do the session key decryption inside the HSM and not in any place in memory. That DecryptNaBox server in the PKI literature, it's called key server. And it is treated with the same level of protection as the issuing CA. So that is the first process. The second process is the data decrypt client or DecryptNaBox client. We provide multiple clients. So we provide data decrypt workstation. Data decrypt workstation is used mainly for e-discovery. We provide data decrypt inline. Data decrypt inline is mainly used for automatic decryption. It can be used to decrypt en route for the archive. It can integrate with the text to do inline inspection. Mobile decrypt is a special client that allow us to modify the message header without decrypting the message, and it uses the header modification service that's actually on the DecryptNaBox Key Decrypt server. So how does the process work? The process works simply that the DecryptNaBox client interrogate the encrypted messages. It extracts the message header. Mainly, it extracts the encrypted session key. It takes that encrypted session key and send it through a TLS tunnel to the DecryptNaBox server. The Key Decrypt server then utilize the infrastructure on top between the integration with the certificate authority and the HSM to decrypt the session key or encrypt the session key with another certificate. So that's what the difference between those two certificates, and send them back. So on the tunnels, based on the configuration of the client and which client is speaking with, it either will send the unencrypted session key to the client, or it sends back an encrypted session key with another certificate. Think of it for a certificate that the private key exists with the archiving solution or with the text or something like that. And then it takes that information and act on the message, either by decrypting it if it received the session key in unencrypted format, or by appending that newly encrypted session key to the message header. Think of that as CCing someone else. The message stays encrypted, but you are adding another certificate that the owner of the private key will be able to use it to decrypt. So this is in general our DecryptNaBox. Before I move forward, if you guys have any question, please type it in and I will try to answer it. But moving forward, what I was going to cover in the next two slides is the DecryptNaBox platform has deployed and used in many scenarios. So I'm planning to cover two scenarios in the next two slides. One scenario is an e-discovery implementation at a major federal agency. And then the second scenario is something that integrates with archiving. So let me focus first on the first scenario. So the first scenario, the customers has, or the agency has 9 departments. Each department has its own e-discovery office. Each e-discovery office has its own e-discovery process that wants to maintain. Within the department, some use PIV encryption, some use locally trusted certificate authority. So there is no standardization on the encryption or email encryption within the agency. The agency want to build an enterprise solution that address the uniqueness of each department, and they want that solution to be hosted instead of being managed. So what we did actually is we worked with the customer. Zeva maintained FISMA high cages in two FISMA high facilities. We build the environment within those. We follow the federal PKI requirement, and the solution went through ATO and went through multiple federal PKI audits. It acts at the same level as the federal PKI. So what we did is we built a key decrypt server in both locations with the appropriate HSMs. We created a VPN to the certificate authority that issued the private key. We configured the system to pull as needed. But the most important things that we did for them is we created a robust workflow approval engine. That workflow approval engine is customized per department within the agency. So the way this works is each agency will actually assign a list of key recovery officers, KROs and KRAs. The KROs is configured within these are configured within the workflow. So the workflow define who has the right to submit a request and what happens when that request is received by the system. And typically, to follow federal PKI requirement, we require 2 KRAs to approve the request. So the process starts by the following. The KRO sign a data decryption authorization form. It put the information it needs to be reached for the KRA to approve the request. It signed it with their PIV card or CAC card based on the organization, submitted through our data decrypt client, which at the end of the presentation, if we have time, we'll show you a demo. That request reached the workflow. That workflow will then fire the appropriate approval requirement. Once the workflow receive at least 2 approval, that information it passed to the key decrypt server. The key decrypt server will actually create a temporary access control to the requester to access or to be able to use the corresponding private key that is included in the request. It actually checks its system to see if it has access to those private key. If it not, it then use the VPN to go fetch the appropriate private key and put them inside the corresponding HSM. Then it sends notification to the KRO telling him you are ready to decrypt. The KRO will use the exact same data decrypt client to actually start decrypting the process, and everything is working flow, and everything is actually has an audit completion for it. So this is the first scenario, or the first scenario that I would like to cover. I'm going to the next scenario if there is no questions.
Sam, go ahead, Gary.
Yep, Sam, there is a question.
Can somebody read the question for me?
Yes. Are we adding a single point of failure by adding the session server to the process? Are there redundancies to prevent or mitigate outages, specifically the key decryption server?
Yes. So eventually I need to. No, because eventually this key decrypt server doesn't have to be a single key decrypt server. It actually, in the second scenario, we have 8 key decrypt server working together to achieve the performance required by the customers. And also in this scenario that you are looking at, we have a primary site and we have a secondary site. Any problem on the primary site, the system will flip to the secondary site, and the secondary site will pick up the lab. The communication for this, so it's not a single server, it's not a single location. And maybe I will cover that when I go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
All right. So this is the second process that I would like to mention. This is actually a scenario implemented at a large intelligent agents. So the problem that they have, the agency has been implementing or want to implement an archiving solution. They found out that more than 30% of their emails is CAC encrypted. So, they couldn't find any archiving solution that's able to index CAC encrypted data. So that was part of a NERA capstone projects. So we communicated with the agency and we were able to do the following. We first divided our solution into two places. So within their internal network, we implemented, or they implemented, a key decrypt server. That key decrypt server, as I mentioned, they have 8 key decrypt servers working in conjunction. That key decrypt servers has its own HSM. There is a slight change in the way we do business. Typically, we integrate with the certificate authority. It seems due to sensitivity with the agency, they didn't want us to integrate with the CA. So we did a modification to it. So when we receive a request for a session key that we don't have the corresponding private key in the HSM, we send notification to a system controlled by the agency. That system go fetch the private key from their CA and then dump it to us into our HSM and then notify us of the action. So we will go ahead and continue the process. So that's on the internal network. On the external network, which is under AWS GovCloud, they were implementing the archiving solution. So we work with their archiving vendor and we integrate with them to allow them to index their encrypted messages. So the integration took place through 2 folders, one called the input folder and one called the output folder. So what's happening here is when the archiving system receive encrypted message, they drop it to us in the input folder. We then pick that message, and by we is the data decrypt inline, and we configure the data decrypt inline to run at the same server as the archiving system. So what's going to happen here is we pick the SMI message. We then extract the session key, send it to the key decrypt server. The key decrypt server does the normal work, which I described, and then send back the decrypted session key to the data inline. The data inline in this scenario, we decrypt the message and encrypt it back with a shared session key that is shared with the archiving system. And then send that encrypted journal message back and dump it into the Zeva output folder, which then the archiving system will be able to pick it and index it. And as I mentioned, this solution is in production and currently processing around 8 million messages, encrypted messages per day. So that's the second scenario. So before I hand it back to Gary to speak about ZevaCrypt, what I did here is I described our technology and I gave 2 large deployments that took place or has been implemented using our technology. One to address e-discovery and one to address, auto archiving. So is there any other question?
I don't see any other questions at this point, Sam.
All right, Gary, then I'm going to hand it back to you and speak about the benefit and then take it from ZevaCrypt.
Correct. Right. So to summarize the benefits with DecryptNaBox, you get a systematic key recovery process that supersedes your manual steps. And with that, you're gaining auditability and approval workflow while you're still retaining control of your keys. And the solution's designed to integrate with other platforms. As we mentioned, we've implemented it for an archiving solution. It can be used for data inspection. And also it is extensible to integrate with other applications. So if you think of e-discovery tools like Relativity, that we have the ability to do customized integration. The best part is that it can be implemented without really changing your existing IT infrastructure. Our demos are actually going to show you how easy it is to use the client and how the workflow actually occurs. And with DecryptNaBox, you get better agility for your e-discovery or your Freedom of Information Act requests. And our automation really translates to real dollar savings when you compare to the current manual labor costs in order to recover those private keys. At this point, I want to turn our attention to ZevaCrypt, which is our intuitive end-to-end encryption solution that supports PIV and CAC certificate encryptions. So sensitive communication utilizing email should always be using encryption to securely send the information so that only the intended recipient has access to that data. PIV and CAC cards do have the ability to use the existing PKI infrastructure for this end-to-end encryption communication. So it makes sense to leverage the existing infrastructure. And while certificate-based encryption is not typically a problem within an agency, the problem and complexity arises in the ability to send encrypted email across agencies using this PKI infrastructure. And the first challenge requires you to have the recipient's public key in order to send them that encrypted email. This means if you don't have the key, you would need to contact the recipient to have them send you the public key, which you would use in order to encrypt the email and then send it to the recipient. And this is time consuming and overly complex for end users. Another issue with this method is that it's not centrally managed. There's no way to validate the certificates, manage the certificates that are sent to individuals. And it also means that someone can be asked multiple times for their public key since it isn't really discoverable in a central repository for these public keys. So with the development of ZevaCrypt, we designed it to address this complexity. So it enables a true end-to-end encryption that utilizes the PIV and CAC card credentials in a very intuitive way for end users, without the need to change the existing infrastructure or even to re-encrypt the emails that are already sent. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Sam to describe ZevaCrypt and to show you a few demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So as Gary explained, end-to-end encryption, especially with PIV and CAC, is the most secure way of encryption. And while encryption within the agency is relatively easy, cross-agency encryption, especially with PIV and CAC, is very complex. So we try to design, a solution that is make it very easy to send and receive PIV and CAC encrypted data, even if you don't have the recipient certificate. So instead of going through the slide, I included here on the slide a link to a video. I'm gonna run the video and I hopefully you guys see the audio. If you don't, then I will go through it. So let's see.
Introducing ZevaCrypt, Zeva's true end-to-end encryption solution that helps federal agencies utilize their existing PIV public key infrastructure to encrypt email messages exchanged across federal agencies, including contractors. Although many organizations have their own public key infrastructure, PKI, for encryption of emails between its employees, using these PKI certificates outside the organization is a time-consuming and manual process. ZevaCrypt will enable true end-to-end encryption and ensuring the sender is encrypting for the right individual. The sender requests the certificates for the intended recipients through ZevaCrypt. ZevaCrypt will search its directory for the requested identities and return a trusted certificate. If an identity is not found, ZevaCrypt will send back an organization-specific certificate that complies with the sender's trust settings. The sender can now encrypt the email with the appropriate certificates and send the emails to the designated recipients directly. Since the certificate of the first recipient was discovered, he or she will be able to read the email natively. The remaining recipients will receive an invitation to ZevaCrypt, push their certificates, and re-encrypt the emails with their own trusted certificate. If the recipient certificate does not comply with the sender's trust policy, the recipient will not be able to read the encrypted email. At all times, the email never passes through the ZevaCrypt server, maintaining an uninterrupted client-to-client message flow. By using ZevaCrypt, federal agencies can leverage federated PKI and its associated identity assurance levels the way it was intended. ZevaCrypt allows users to encrypt emails using the highest assurance credentials available in the ZevaCrypt directory through a policy processing engine that can be configured for the organization's trust profile, allowing senders to discover recipient certificates outside their organization that are otherwise inaccessible, without any fallback authentication to username and password on third-party web portal. ZevaCrypt is a highly secure cloud-hosted solution that complies with all applicable regulatory requirements. Global Encryption Directory allows public key infrastructure to be used the way it was intended, allowing organizations true, intuitive, end-to-end encryption. Buy ZevaCrypt now.
All righty, so now going back to the slides. So eventually I want just to mention, so I think I was able to show you this and the audio was working. There is two components to this process. We implemented an Outlook plugin, and that Outlook plugin is the way to communicate with the service. The service is hosted at AWS, and mainly it contains multiple components, but the main component that it contains is a global encryption directory. The global encryption directory is just a list of certificates. We have the capability to pull certificates from multiple sources. Currently, we have over 120,000 certificates into it because we are doing a proof of concept with a federal agency, and we pull their certificate there. But we have multiple tenants, and we can add as many tenants as we need. The global encryption directory has also the capability to federate with other directories. So instead of having all the links here, for example, we can have the mail directory and we can federate with the mail directory. So when we receive anything related to this, we just pass it to discover the certificate and come back. There will be a need of integration between them, but all that is built into it. We have a layer of verification and trust settings, which will make sure we return, you can customize it based on tenant, and the tenant will have the capability to configure the trust settings based on what they are looking for. So the process is easy. As I mentioned, inside Outlook, you click encrypt and send. It will then communicate with the service to retrieve a compliance certificate. When it retrieves a compliance certificate, it uses the native S-MIME encryption to send it. So eventually at the other end, since this is a native S-MIME encryption, the end users do not need the plugin to read the encrypted message. They should be able to read the encrypted message natively. There is one case that, or there is a case where we don't have, the system was not able to find an appropriate certificate for the intended recipient. In this case, the recipient will receive a message that they cannot read, but they will receive with it instruction how to be able to read it. What they need to do is they need to upload their certificate to the system and then click re-encrypt. And this re-encrypt is the same mobile decrypt that I described to you at the beginning, where what we do is when we don't find a recipient, a certificate, we use a tenant certificate that nobody has a private to except the system. We encrypt the session key with the tenant certificate, and this re-encrypt will allow us to swap the tenant certificate with the end user certificate after they push a certificate to us. And I will show you a demo toward the end of the things. We have two demos. One demo is related to ZevaCrypt and one demo is related to the DecryptNaBox. With that, if there is no question, I would like to move it to Gary.
Oh, actually, Sam, there is a question, and even though we can't talk about specific implementations, I think the question is, how does the eDiscovery directory integrate with existing infrastructure? And how does it pull in the user's public certs, for instance, or validate that they are a user within that organization?
So in this specific implementation, we use LDAP pull because the other one is an LDAP directory. But we actually created the capability to use LDAP. We can integrate with other directories. It doesn't have to be just LDAP to pull, but also we created a portal for people to push certificate. Our Outlook plugin as well has the capability to push certificate from it. So we created multiple ways for people to push certificate. But the current implementation we are referring to, where we pulled 120,000 certificate, we use LDAP for that to keep it synchronized as well.
Great, thank you, Sam.
All right.
Yeah, so really, if we talk about the benefits of ZevaCrypt, it's really about encryption outside of your organization. Right? It's the ability to have a directory that allows a discoverable way to find someone's public key in order to send an encrypted email, and then also a facility for users to upload their keys if it does not currently exist in the directory itself. And again, it really makes use of the existing infrastructure around PIV and CAC public key infrastructure in order to send those encrypted emails. And it complies with the government directives, first and foremost around OMB 1917, HIPAA compliance, other particular regulations and directives. And the nice part, again, is that it's really, a hosted service. It's worry-free. It's implemented without changing your current infrastructure. It's, again, zero supports your organization. And as Sam mentioned earlier, the email and data is never routed through our systems. Are there any questions regarding ZevaCrypt? And
I
Mr.
see there is a question from Todd referring to specific implementation with other vendors. We currently are speaking with those vendors, but the one that I refer to is not Caroline or Exostar, but we are in conversation with them as well. All right. So if there is no other, we can entertain questions or go through the demos. We do have 17 minutes, which will allow us to go through both of those demos. All right. So the first thing that I was going to go with ZevaCrypt first and then go through DecryptNaBox, because simply the ZevaCrypt is a simple platform to show. I mentioned at the beginning that it's very easy to send encrypted message. So let me just go here and show you how it is easy to send encrypted message, and this is live. So all what I need to do, click email normal, do a normal message. It went to the other side of my computer, so give me 1 second. So here, if I want, for example, to send it to Tyler, so I'm just hit test, and all what I need to do, click encrypt and send, and then it will go fetch Tyler's certificate, encrypted, and send it. And Tyler will be able to read that encrypted message using his PIV card because he is an IRS contractor. So it's as easy as that. It goes fetch the information. What I want to show you is actually something else. All these messages are messages that was sent to me when my certificate was not on the directory. And if you notice, I can't read them. They are encrypted, but I can't read them. So with using our plugin, I can push my certificate by just adding my certificate, which is my IdenTrust certificate, and push it to the system. And after I push it to the system, all what I need to do is just click re-encrypt. As soon as I click re-encrypt, this message that I was not able to read, it will now open and it stays encrypted. And what happened here is what I described to you in my presentation, which is we take the encrypted session key, send it back. That encrypted session key is encrypted with a tenant certificate. We use then we decrypt that session key and we encrypt it back with my certificate. And allow you to append that information. The message stays encrypted and you will be able to read it. So I think that is as much as I want to do with DecryptNaBox. I can show you the management portal. That management portal may have, it will reveal who we are doing proof of concept with. So unless some of them here on the call give me the approval, I will not go there. So if somebody give me the approval, I will go ahead and show the portal. If not, then I'm going to go to DecryptNaBox. All right, then I'm going to go to DecryptNaBox. So with DecryptNaBox, I was going to do an e-discovery implementation. And the e-discovery implementation, so I was going to go to our lab. I will log in as Eric. Eric is a KRO, key recovery. He going to submit, he will going to try to decrypt John PST file. He going to get access denied. He's going to go through the process of requesting permission, which will fire the approval workflow. For simplicity, we made the approval workflow just require one approval, which is me right now. So once I approve the Eric request, Eric will receive a notification and he will be able to actually decrypt John PST. And then I'm just going to show that process. I'm not going to go in more detail more than that. So with that, let me go to Eric. So this is Eric machine. Let me first show you, for example, here's his Outlook. So he has a PST for John. He mapped this PST into Outlook, and here it is in the Outlook data file. And if you notice, he's not able to open any one of those messages. All these messages are encrypted. And as an e-discovery officer, he needs to generate a report. He's not able to do anything because these messages are encrypted. So he, as instructed, he goes and run our data decrypt client. As I mentioned, our data decrypt client is did I click on it? No, I did. Our data decrypt client is simply used for e-discovery. And the first thing he's going to try to do is going to try to do decryption. If he click decrypt and try to decrypt John PST, it just simply, did I add it? All right. Click start, and it will start interrogate the files, but it will then give us, so it will get us red. If you notice, it's access denied. If I look at the errors, it's access denied. He's not able to decrypt any of those messages. I'm going to show you the settings eventually. In the settings, you actually define the portal you are looking at and define the certificate. You always use PIV or CAC to actually authenticate to the service, because we interrogate from it some of the information and stuff like that. Eventually, and this is the same thing for the workflow approval. So eventually what Eric need to do is need to request permission. This request permission is also provide the reason why we can customize this, how many time to live that fetched private key will have, because eventually once we use the private key, we purge it from our HSM. He need now to just ask for the guy that need to, I'm just gonna need to find John email. Just says, I want to decrypt, or I want access to John. So he wants to do that. He has the capability to upload a PDF file. If you remember, I mentioned that at the beginning when I described. Let's say he right now doesn't need to do anything and he just needs to submit. It just reminds him that you didn't upload a PDF document, but you can go ahead and ignore that. And in the lab, we enable a one approval, but typically it's a two approval. So now what we did is there is a pending request. That bending request will fire an email to me. I will receive the email. Once I receive the email, I will click on the link, and that link will take me here. And that's actually where I will see my bending request. So I just received the email. Here it is. And here I see the request. I can look in the detail. I can approve or reject. When I click approve, it shows me the detail. This is coming from here. If there is a file, there will be a link to the file where I can click on it and see the detail of the file. So I can either again approve or reject. Let's say I approve here. Once I approve here and go back to Eric, and if I refresh, you will see the bending now is approved. With the bending approved, he can now just click retry all. And when it click retry all, if you notice, all of them now getting decrypted one after the other, and there is no problems whatsoever. And that goes to the request to the servers, and that will be there to track the servers and provide auditing information to the server. So that is the second things that I want to show. With that, I think I cover both of those demos.
Hello, Sam. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
And I thank you so much for showing this to the federal community. When it comes to the private key, you importing into your fetching it. That's I think the right term word is fetching the private key into your HSM to perform the decryption. Do you the agency you're working with, do they have a specific time for the private key to stay within the environment? It's not open-ended, is it?
No, it's not. So what we do, Fred, is we flush the private key maximum 30 days. So if the investigator or the e-discovery office need more than 30 days, they need to request it again. So they can provide how many days to it, up to 30 days. After that, we flush the private key from our HSM. So we do not consider HSM a key server per the federal PKI. We just use them temporarily to do data decryption and flush them. So the CA has the archived or the escrowed key, not our system.
Thank you. I think it's important that some of us on this call understand the key difference, because we don't want to get an impression that you are creating another key escrow in a different environment.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, any other question? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask in this case. We still have 6 minutes. If there is no question, I may bring it back to Joseph now. Or to Bob. Bob, maybe if you want Bob to close the session.
Yeah, Sam, let me just kind of wrap this up, and then I'll go back to Joe to close this out. So appreciate everybody staying with us for the past hour. Gary and Sam and David, well done. Thanks for laying that out. Our goal today was threefold. We wanted to frame the problem. We wanted to talk about the technology. And we wanted to talk about the technology in the context of some use cases that would be relevant to DISA and some of the missions that you have. And then the last part is we wanted to provide a short demo, and we were able to do that. Joe, you talked a little bit about, the session was being recorded. It was also going to be posted at the National Security Innovation Network. You have points of contact there on the final slide with Gary and Sam. And so anybody on the FedRAMP network that's dialed in today, if you want a deep dive on either DecryptNaBox or ZevaCrypt, feel free to reach out to us, and we can go into any level of depth that you'd like to. And with that, Joe, back over to you. And again, thanks to you and the DISA team. Over.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank Zeva for coming in today and giving a very thorough presentation. We really appreciate that. If you are interested in further exploring this technology, As just mentioned, the contact information for the company is on the screen right now, so please reach out to the company. If you don't feel comfortable reaching out to the company directly, you can contact my organization, the DISA Emerging Technology Directorate, and we can intercede in discussions with Zeva. I also like to put a plug in for the DISA Works Innovation Lab. That is a lab that DISA has stood up in Columbia, Maryland. It's outside of the fort, so we are free of the security restrictions that are encompassed on being on the fort. We're located in the same building. DISA Works is in the same building as Dreamport, which is Cyber Command's Innovation Lab. And we use the DISA Works Innovation Lab to perform testing, evaluation, piloting of technologies that are out in the industry for potential consideration within the DISA infrastructure. So if you are interested in exploring the Zeva technology that was presented today in conjunction with the DISA Works Lab, please reach out to our organization for discussions on how to get that to happen. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks everybody in the audience for your time today. We know it's very valuable, and wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Joe.